In the dim mines of Apatros, a towering young miner labors under failing equipment, his strength carved from years of brutal work. When his hydraulic jack dies, an older worker steps in, trying to claim the spot with a sneer and the law of the mines on his side. But the young man refuses, his presence heavy with menace. The elder spits venom, dragging up the ghost of the boy's father, a cruel man whose memory still burns like acid. What begins as a clash over broken tools spirals into a storm of old wounds, with rage and defiance hanging thick in the air, as if the dark fate awaiting him had already begun to stir. The miner stood face to face with his tormentor, mocked as worthless and branded with the cruel name once hurled at him by his own father. Rage boiled beneath the weight of exhaustion, yet when the fight broke out, it wasn't brute strength that saved him, it was the hidden power flowing through him. A gift he had never been taught to understand. In the clash, he foresaw the strike before it landed, turned pain into precision, and left his foe broken on the cavern floor. Punished for brawling, stripped of work and wages, he walked away from the mines with nothing but his fury and his secret strength. Across the plains he rode, changing from sweat-soaked miner into sharp-eyed gambler, bound for the cantina where soldiers waited, and where fortune like fate was his to seize. The cantina buzzed with the clatter of credits and the shuffle of cards as off-duty soldiers tried their luck, easy prey after a few drinks. Des stepped through the door, his imposing frame cutting through the smoke-filled room, and made his way to the bar where the familiar Neimoidian greeted him with a drink he hadn't asked for. With a nod, Des downed it in a single motion, brushing off the question about why he was free from the mines so early, with a grim tale of biting a rival's thumb, earning a chuckle in return. Talk shifted to the recruiters, their warnings of looming war spilling into the air. But Des only smirked, knowing better than to trade one kind of chains for another. The Republic promised freedom, yet left miners buried in debt, broken bodies, and fading hair, while profits lined the pockets of others. No Jedi would ever come to save him. No soldier's glory was worth his blood. One day he would escape this world, and until then, every card game was a chance to tilt the scales. His storm gray eyes scanned the crowded tables, soldiers laughing and gambling, and he knew he'd be waiting for the right seat to open, a patient predator in the dim light of the cantina. After the soldiers had their fill of drinks, it wasn't hard to strip them of credits over a round of cards. Into the smoky cantina walked the miner, heading straight for the bar, where the Neimoidian barkeep greeted him with a drink poured before a word was spoken. They shared a quiet understanding, one born since childhood, and with a single gulp the glass was emptied. "You're early," the barkeep teased. The miner shrugged, admitting he'd gotten into trouble in the mines, even biting off a thumb in the scuffle, earning him an early release. Laughter followed, but then the talk shifted. Republic recruiters were in tonight, spreading tales of war and warning of dark enemies. Yet few were listening. The miner smirked. He knew their promises of freedom from the mines were nothing but bait for a harsher fate, trading one kind of death for another. He had no illusions of rescue, not from soldiers, not from Jedi, and certainly not from the Republic that bought the ore while the miners starved in debt. Hair lost, future bleak, yet his will unbroken. He dreamed only of one day buying his way off this cursed rock. Cards might be the key, so he scanned the room, watching soldiers huddled around tables, and waited for his chance to play. The soldiers burst out in anger, shouting that the droid was part of it, accusing everyone of hating them while their brothers died in battle, spitting insults before storming out. The cantina owner shut the place down, ordering everyone to leave except one unlucky guest who had to stay behind. He admitted it was safer that way, since the furious soldiers might be waiting outside, but made it clear he was still mad and demanded help cleaning up the chaos. As they picked up chairs, he poured a rare drink, smoother than the wild kind others preferred, and shared it as both a warning and a comfort, confessing his worry about the recent fight. The guest protested it wasn't his fault, but the cantina owner reminded him he bit off a thumb and nearly sparked a riot just by trying to play cards, pointing out how he had a habit of provoking others, pulling their strings like puppets, whether he admitted it or not. This time he never let up, pushing harder even when he had the upper hand, almost like he wanted the other guy to snap. When accused of planning it all, he denied it, blaming only the cards and insisting there was no way he could control the deal. But his friend wasn't convinced. It wasn't just the cards. It was the anger, raw, heavy, and radiating across the room. The crowd fed on it, twisted by his rage until chaos boiled over. Even his ally felt it, fighting the urge to fire into the crowd instead of the ceiling, struggling against a violent pull that wasn't his own. When confronted, he called it madness, swearing he'd never do such a thing, never could. Yet the warning came anyway. Something had changed in him. Something strange and dangerous awakened by giving into emotion. He brushed it off with a jab about relying on feelings, but the unease lingered, a bad feeling hanging in the air. He muttered that sleep was needed, but in the shadows of night he was hunted. Leaving the cantina, he was trailed by soldiers who thought him easy prey. Yet he felt their presence before they struck, fists cracking bone in the darkness until one enemy drew a glowing blade. With swift instinct, he turned the weapon against its wielder, leaving a body lifeless on the hard ground as the others fled. Realizing the danger of discovery, he returned to the cantina where his old ally urged him toward escape, revealing ties to the Sith. Offered a path beyond Apatros, he accepted without hesitation, slipping aboard a vessel bound for war. No longer a miner, he rose as a soldier, his hidden power sharpening from bar fights to battlefield triumphs. Time and again, he defied impossible odds, saving comrades and crushing foes, until loyalty bound his troopers to him alone, a leader forged by darkness and destined for more. He raised his hand, signaling his squad to hold back, knowing there was nothing they could do for him now. Accepting his fate, he allowed himself to be taken, hoping one day he might explain his side of the story. The cell they threw him into was little more than a pit, and time dragged endlessly until a heavy figure cloaked in dark robes appeared, ordering that he be brought to Korriban. Soon he found himself walking the ancient halls of the Sith Academy, led through stone corridors until he stood before the same imposing figure revealed as Lord Kopech, his Inquisitor. With cold authority, Kopech declared his judgment would be final, recognizing no ties between the prisoner and the Republic or Jedi. When challenged, the soldier spat back that he owed them nothing, and Kopech saw truth in his defiance. The conversation cut deeper accusations of cowardice, answered with sharp defiance, a refusal to waste lives on foolish orders, and the bold claim that true cowardice was found in his commander, not in him. Kopech studied him carefully, recalling campaigns on distant worlds and victories won with cunning and strength, and in that moment, it became clear this warrior was no ordinary soldier, but someone the Sith might have great use for. He signaled his squad to stand down, knowing no rescue was possible, only the weight of fate pressing upon him. Dragged to a pit-like cell and left to languish, he awaited judgment until a robed figure appeared, ordering his transfer to Korriban. There, amidst the looming temples near the Valley of Shadows, he was led into the Sith Academy. Down a warm, dark corridor, he met the heavyset Twi'lek, who revealed himself as Lord Kopech, his Inquisitor, declaring that only his verdict would matter. Kopech dismissed any ties to Jedi or Republic and challenged the prisoner's defiance of orders, branding him a coward. The soldier fired back, claiming strategy over blind obedience, branding his commander the true coward for fearing his own masters. Recognizing the fire and cunning, Kopech acknowledged his feats across countless campaigns, hinting that such strength might yet serve a darker cause. In the shadows of Korriban, a hardened soldier is told that the impossible feats whispered about him are true. Skeptical yet curious, he admits knowing little of the Force beyond Jedi myths and their sway over the Republic. His interrogator speaks of a greater truth. Armies may clash across worlds, but the true war lies between those who command the Force. Jedi and Sith are locked in a struggle that will shape the galaxy for 1,000 years. The soldier, chosen and set apart, is told his talents are no accident. They are fragments of a power beyond imagining. He has only scratched the surface of what he is destined to become. The Force was alive in the air, a heat like fire waiting to ignite, and he felt it burn within him. The dark side was passion, anger, strength, and it called to him, promising power far beyond what he had ever touched. He was told his past as a soldier was finished, that here he could be forged into something greater, a weapon of the Brotherhood of Darkness. He accepted without hesitation, swearing he would not be left behind. Ready to abandon his old life, a new beginning was offered, the chance to shed his former name and be reborn. He chose the name Bane, a title once meant to break him, now claimed as the source of his strength. With that choice, he embraced the shadows fully, anger becoming his fuel, destiny taking shape. Reborn as Bane of the Sith, the path before him was set, and those who doubted would soon see the truth of his power. On a world ruled by a ruthless company, a miner rose from the shadows, his path twisting into the halls of an academy where power and suspicion clashed. One master questioned the convenience of his arrival, calling it luck, while another dismissed the doubt, insisting on destiny. They argued over his age, his strength, and whether the others would allow him to rise, yet the truth burned clear. Soldiers could never bring victory, but one true master could change everything. The fate of each student was decided by their potential. Those with raw but limited ability were hurled into brutal training grounds, molded into raging warriors, beasts of destruction driven by fury. Others, more gifted, were cast into shadowed worlds to master secrecy and manipulation, their survival forging them into silent assassins who could kill without lifting a hand. Yet even they fell short before the Jedi. On harsher worlds, apprentices endured relentless trials under Sith masters, becoming acolytes to swell the dark armies, counterparts to the Jedi Knights. But only on Korriban were the chosen few shaped into future lords, where the very soil bled with ancient power. Within temples that pulsed with darkness, they were told greatness awaited those who survived the merciless path. Strength promised power, power promised victory, and victory promised freedom. Failure, however, meant oblivion. Among them, one apprentice stood apart, older, behind in knowledge, yet burning with potential. He was watched closely, tutored with care, for his destiny stretched far beyond that of the others. The fate of each student is determined by the potential sensed within them. Those with limited talent are sent to distant worlds, molded into warriors of fury, their emotions twisted into unrelenting rage until they become beasts of destruction. Yet brute strength alone cannot topple the Republic. Those with greater gifts are dispatched to shadowed allies, trained in secrecy, deception, and assassination, striking unseen and leaving death without lifting a blade. Still, even they cannot match the Jedi. Other academies forge adepts and acolytes who stand as dark counterparts to the Jedi Knights, but like their enemies, they must bow to greater masters. Only those marked with the power to ascend are brought to Korriban, the ancient heart of the Sith, where the dark side breathes through stone and earth, and apprentices are forged into lords. Here, the chosen are promised strength, power, and victory, but failure means oblivion. One such apprentice arrives late to the path, behind others in knowledge, yet the masters watch closely, feeding him the secrets of the darkness. For within him lies a dangerous potential that cannot be ignored. It did not take long for him to awaken the force within. After only a few days of training, he could leap to impossible heights, sprint without tiring, and move objects through sheer will. He was no longer a miner or a soldier, but an apprentice reborn in the shadows. The spark of darkness within him blazed into an inferno, flooding his mind with clarity and power, ready to unleash fury in the dueling ring. On the academy rooftop, students gathered under the Blade Master, a warrior who had mastered every form of combat. In those early lessons, he had been the weakest, refusing to enter the ring, mocked for his inexperience. But today was different. Today, he stepped forward and issued a challenge. His opponent sneered, boasting of past victories and belittling him as weak and predictable. Defeat is bitter, human, the rival spat. You trained for weeks, yet you still fail. Victory is mine again. The apprentice rose from the ground, eyes burning with defiance, and growled, "Then come finish me!" But the rival only smirked, claiming the fight would end when he chose, mocking that the masters favored him, yet he remained inferior. The title echoed like a curse, Bane of the Sith, and he claimed it as his own, refusing to let any foe twist it against him. When his rival mocked him as worthless, Bane's fury ignited, and in the dueling ring, he unleashed the dark power, crushing his enemy's throat until life spilled away. The Blade Master only watched in silence as Bane walked free, leaving behind a corpse and whispers of fear. In that arena, the weapons were laced with venom to mimic true pain, teaching apprentices the cost of weakness without the loss of limbs. Yet Bane's victory drew the gaze of another, the Academy's strongest, who tried to lure him into a challenge before he was ready. Bane turned away, knowing the game was one of patience, but he could feel the shadow of rivalry stalking him. Summoned the next morning before a Sith Lord to answer for the death he caused, he walked the halls in grim thought. Killing students was forbidden under the Brotherhood's new creed of equality. Yet Bane knew that weakness had no place among the Sith. When the accusation came, he answered coldly. His opponent had fallen not because of rules broken, but because he had let his guard down. In the ring, he struck without hesitation, tearing through defenses with raw power, but when his opponent fell, he did not stop. The lesson was clear. It was not the blow itself, but the act of continuing against one already beaten that crossed the line. The master's words cut sharp. Mercy and restraint were forbidden weaknesses, yet the rules of the training ground demanded discipline. Why had the Blade Master not intervened? Because he wanted to see if cruelty or control would rule the moment. Death, once unthinkable, was framed as a necessary loss if it forged true strength. Passion was the fuel, strength the weapon, victory the prize. Chains would be broken only by those who embraced this creed fully. When he whispered of the prophecy, the answer came heavy. Ancient texts spoke of a chosen one, the Sith'ari, the figure destined to destroy and reshape the Order. What did you just say? The father snapped, his voice dripping with contempt as the boy answered. I'm only 18, rage flared. 18, and still too foolish to keep your mouth shut. You're the curse of my existence. The boy fired back, trembling yet defiant. Are you going to beat me again? Teach me another lesson? You drink away everything we have and then blame me for it. Maybe if you sobered up, we could escape this rotten world. The father roared, spitting insults, but the boy's final words cut like a blade. If you raise your hand tonight, remember it might be your last. I hope you die. And with that, the memory shattered. He awoke, drenched in sweat, haunted by the night his father died. The world believed it was a heart attack, but the truth burned through him. Now he had killed his own father with the power of the dark side. Guilt gnawed at him, draining the rage that once fueled his strength. Yet he clung to the creed that the weak must fall before the strong. Steeling himself, he turned to his training. Under the watchful eye of the Blade Master, each mistake was struck down. Too slow! Your guard is open! The master barked. I'm sorry. I'll drill the sequence again, the apprentice muttered, but the master's voice thundered. Routines? Empty motions mean nothing. Power comes only through mastery. What did you just say? The man snarled, spitting venom as he mocked the boy's age. 18 and still too foolish to know when to shut your mouth. You're the curse of my life. But the boy did not back down. Are you going to beat me now? Teach me another lesson? His defiance only deepened as he shouted that it was his father's drinking that chained them to this miserable world, not him. Rage flared, threats were exchanged, and with a final, venomous glare, the boy hissed, I hope you die. Suddenly, sweat dripped as he awoke, breath ragged, realizing it had been a memory his father, the night of his death, the truth buried in shadow. The world had believed it, a heart attack, but the boy now knew the dark side had surged from him that night, ending his father's life. The revelation twisted inside him, shaking the fury that once fueled his power, leaving behind something dangerously close to guilt. Yet strength demanded resolve, and so he pushed forward, reporting for training. His master's voice cracked like a whip. No, wrong. You're too slow, your left side wide open. Humiliated, he stammered an apology, promising to drill the sequence. But the master's scorn cut deeper. Routines? What good will that do? Kas'im's words cut sharp as a blade, spitting contempt at the notion of mere speed, reminding that Fohark had once known every sequence, every form, yet still fell. Techniques were nothing but tools, he declared. The true key lay in unleashing the dark side, not in muscle or swiftness. He accused his student of holding back, moving slow, predictable, drained of will. When the pupil vowed to try harder, the master sneered at the word try, ending the lesson, commanding him to return only when ready to embrace darkness fully. In the weeks since Fohark's death, the student's training declined, his inner conflicts choking his connection to the Force, and the Blade Master saw the barrier that must be broken if he was ever to rise among the Brotherhood. Beyond the halls of the Academy, war burned among the stars. An army of light had gathered under Jedi command on Ruusan, and the Brotherhood's leader answered by uniting Sith Lords into a force of war driven by subtle manipulations and constant exertion to keep their rivalries in check. News of this turning tide reached Korriban, where Qordis summoned the Blade Master for word from the front and to weigh the faltering progress of his troubled apprentice. On the war-torn world, The Jedi gather under a single banner led by their general, while their enemies march to meet them in battle. In the shadows of the academy, two masters speak. One questions if their students should join the fight. The other dismisses the thought, saying none are ready. A name is raised, one apprentice who once showed promise, but his pride blinds him. Another name follows, the one who defeated a rival weeks before, yet has since faltered. The masters sense fear within him, not of others, but of himself, of the dark power he has glimpsed and now hesitates to embrace. One declares him unworthy, instructing that he be cast aside, no longer taught or guided. Yet the other believes time might still shape him, reminding that unlike the others who trained since childhood, he began his path as a grown man. Still, the decree is final. He is to be turned away, abandoned to find strength alone. Stripped of guidance, the apprentice faces the brutal task of reclaiming power by his own hand, a struggle proving far more difficult than he imagined. Cast out in front of everyone, he became a ghost in the halls, ignored in lessons, stripped of respect, and marked as prey for those eager to climb higher. Knowing his downfall would invite a challenge, he chose to strike first, stepping into the ring against the Academy's strongest apprentice. At first, his defenses held, but soon, the truth hit his opponent was merely playing with him. Then came the storm. Fingers crushed, a knee shattered, jaw broken, teeth scattered, ribs splintered as his body was hurled across the rooftop. Darkness claimed him. Weeks in the tank followed, far longer than any before, a silent reminder of his failure. Broken in body and spirit, he turned to the only refuge left, the archives. Among the dust and forgotten texts, he found whispers of truths untaught by masters, secrets hidden in plain sight, even the forbidden title that no one dared claim. While others sought glory in the presence of lords, he lingered alone in the shadows of knowledge, where a quiet spark began to stir once more. Alone in the library, he buried himself in study, until she appeared once a Jedi. Now bound to the shadows, her beauty sharp enough to command every gaze. He looked up, surprised as she closed the distance, her presence deliberate, her voice steady. She told him she needed his help against an old rival, but he refused, doubtful and weary. Undeterred, she sat, cutting through his silence with words that struck deeper than he expected. She reminded him of the whispers, the duel, the shame of defeat, and the fear that his power was gone. Yet she rejected that lie, insisting the Force could never be lost, that his strength was not destroyed but buried. She spoke of the beast he had crushed, proof of his true potential, of the gift that still burned within him. He admitted that power might remain, but claimed his control was shattered, that he was no longer the warrior he once was. She challenged his doubt, unable to accept his surrender, but he confessed the truth as he saw it. His life had always been driven by fury, and it was that fury that bound him to the darkness. Bane often found himself alone with his studies, so when a former Jedi turned Sith acolyte stepped into the library, her striking presence caught him off guard. She approached with calm confidence, well aware of the effect she had on others, and spoke his name with intent. She claimed she had been searching for him, needing his help against Sith'ari. Bane refused at first, but her plea urged him to listen. She reminded him of his fall in the dueling ring, of how others believed Sith'ari had destroyed him, stripping him of power. Yet she insisted they were wrong, that the Force could not be lost, only hidden, and she had seen proof of his true potential when he defeated Reforged. She told him his gift was still alive, burning within, even if he doubted himself. Bane admitted the power remained, but his control was broken, confessing that his strength had always been tied to his anger, the very rage that once made him strong and bound him to the dark side. She leaned in with a sly smile, whispering that whatever secrets of the dark side she had learned from the Masters, she could share with him too. He demanded to know why she was doing this, suspicion heavy in his tone. She mocked his distrust, admitting openly that she acted only for herself, that she could never defeat the rival alone. The rival was too strong, surrounded by loyal allies, and if she ever hoped to challenge him, she needed someone powerful at her side, someone like him. He warned that the Masters would never approve, that she was risking everything, but she laughed off the danger, claiming only those willing to gamble survive. At last he agreed, offering his help if she would restore his strength in return. Though he sensed her manipulation, she sought him only because he had already lost, believing him easy to use, but alliances of convenience could still serve a purpose. He vowed to pursue his own path, his determination burning brighter than ever. Later, after curfew, he strode through the silent halls and knocked at the Blade Master's door, demanding training once more. The Master shook his head, reminding him that the others had forbidden it. But he pressed back, questioning why a true master should answer to another at all. The Blade Master weighed the risk, but the outcast's words struck deep pride was a dangerous hook. Promises of secret training, of stolen credit, and hidden triumph tipped the scales. At first, the Master mocked him, reminding him of his failure, but the apprentice's fire had returned. He craved power, driven by raw hatred and the hunger for revenge against the rival who had humiliated him. That was enough. Training began in shadow, high atop the temple, and in secrecy he forged himself anew. Week after week, his strength grew. No longer fueled by old wounds from his father, he now fed on rage toward the masters who had discarded him, the students who shunned him, and above all, the enemy he swore to crush. His progress was swift, sharper than ever before, hidden from watchful eyes. Neither ally nor rival suspected the storm rising within him. And at last, with blade in hand, he mastered the brutal form of DJEM, so reborn as a true weapon of the dark side. He was urged to embrace a style that fit his massive frame and crushing strikes, his master praising the way he had anticipated an unexpected move and countered with precision. When he asked for new forms to study, the reply was that he had already surpassed forms, for in their clash he had shifted from one sequence to another with instinct alone. Though unintentional, it was deadly, guided by fury and passion, his blade now a vessel of the dark power itself. Still, he wondered if he was held back by the weapon, questioning whether the double blade gave his master the edge. The answer revealed that the weapon's strength lay not in its function, but in the illusion it created, tricking the mind into seeing endless possibilities. What seemed complex was in truth more limited, yet the uncertainty it planted gave it the upper hand. It was a weapon of power, but not precision, demanding sweeping arcs that faltered when forced into quick thrusts, a style so rare that even warriors of light and shadow had no true defense against it. That very unfamiliarity gave its wielder an edge, for no one trained to face such a weapon. The Master revealed that exotic forms always carried this advantage, though only until one became truly skilled enough to sense their limits. Time spent studying others' ways, however, meant less time mastering one's own, and so progress came not from chasing every style, but from honing the self. Knowledge itself was the gift, the Master declared, power waiting to be shaped by the student's will. Though progress was evident, the student wrestled with contradictions. The Brotherhood preached equality, yet he saw it as weakness, a chain binding strength. To him, equality was a lie, for if all were equal, none could rise above. With this conviction burning inside, he returned to the archives, ready to seek knowledge in secret study. She praised him with a firm tone, telling him that was enough for the day. While he caught his breath and admitted he had never felt anything like it before, she warned him about the danger of losing control, reminding him that giving in could sweep him away along with his foes. He suggested they clean the place before anyone questioned the chaos, while she sighed, exhausted yet comforted, asking where he had learned such relief, and he explained the harsh lessons of labor in the mines. She then revealed the secret of why she left the order, speaking of her master who trained her since childhood, of parents who had given her away, and of the doctrine that demanded she cast aside bonds of family and love. He remarked on how passion was said to lead to darkness, and she explained her master's constant warnings, especially to her and another apprentice she often trained with. When he asked about this other student, she spoke softly of Keel, of how he was close to her, more than close, and how their forbidden bond grew into love despite the rules. He questioned if it was true desire or rebellion against her master, and she admitted it was perhaps a little of both. He was striking and powerful in the Force, and their bond quickly grew into passion. But when their secret was uncovered, the Master's fury was undeniable. He demanded they sever their emotions, forbidding their love. She realized then that the teachings she had followed were lies, that passion was not weakness but strength, and so she turned her back on the Order, dreaming of the Sith. She asked him to join her, to choose between duty and love, but he chose the Order. Though she left him behind, she carried no desire to kill him, even as fate might have claimed him in later battles. Her tale poured out like an old wound, but when he teased her with a careless joke, She struck his hands away, her anger sharp as lightning. Regret followed his words. Yet the lesson lingered. Power could summon storms, but a wounded heart was far harder to master. At dawn, atop the academy roof, the apprentice clashed once more with the Blade Master, his skill now sharp enough to match every strike. His opponent wielded a double-bladed weapon, but the countless hours of training had made the apprentice certain he could defeat his rival in the arena. Then, in the midst of the duel, he lowered his guard, declaring the fight finished. The master, startled, expected a warrior to cling to honor and glory, yet the apprentice dismissed both with words from an ancient teaching. Honor is a fool's prize, and glory serves no one among the dead. The master praised the wisdom, not knowing its source, unaware that his student had just taught him something profound. When blades were sheathed, the apprentice pressed with a question. Why had the Order abandoned the Darth title? The master revealed it was cast aside by decree, a relic of the past. Stripped away because it embodied more than power, it was a challenge, a demand for submission, a mark that bred endless betrayal. Those who bore it could never find stability, for every ally became a rival in waiting. The apprentice countered with the creed that peace was a lie, only passion remained, and though the master corrected himself, he admitted the truth. Those who once carried the title spent as much guarding against their own as they did fighting their enemies. Kaan thundered that waste must end, that all strength should be aimed at the true enemy, not each other. And in his brotherhood, all were equals. But one voice spat back that equality was a lie for the weak, that power belonged only to those who could seize it. Another master warned that the old title drew the Jedi's gaze, painting easy targets for them to strike. The student bowed, masking his defiance, pretending to agree while inside he raged. Why forbid a name when the enemy already knew their leaders? He began to see cracks in the Order, masters preaching lessons that clashed with the ancient truths. Sith, now a pale shadow of what they once were. Power should never be granted. It must be taken. Later, among the silent archives, a sly ally pressed him to challenge the Academy's fiercest duelist. He snarled at her recklessness, warning she would be crushed, but she only burned with determination, refusing to believe in prophecy, insisting that even the strongest was not untouchable. He warned her that the enemy was far too strong, that stepping into the dueling ring meant certain death, but she refused to back down, declaring it the only way forward. Then he revealed his secret. He alone would face the foe, this time with a plan to win. Shocked, she reminded him of how brutally he had been beaten before. But his resolve was unshakable, forged in hidden training and burning vengeance. Their tense exchange ended with her reluctant farewell, while he promised no one would suspect her hand in it. The next morning, under storming skies atop the temple roof, he stood apart, consumed by rage and the lust for revenge. As the rain poured down, soaking the gathered students, he cast aside his robe, his towering frame revealed in raw defiance. With fury blazing in his eyes, he stepped into the ring and roared his challenge, a declaration that this time, everything would end differently. He emerged victorious, having tricked his opponent into thinking there was no danger. He played with him, stretched the fight, and let false confidence grow, striking only when it mattered, for a single blow laced with venom was enough. His rival, untested in drawn-out battles, faltered as time dragged on, while he pulled back again and again, waiting, savoring the moment. When his fury finally erupted, he unleashed a surge of dark power, moving like a blur, tearing away defenses, breaking bone, and leaving screams behind. Power swelled within him until a voice cut through the haze, declaring the fight over, praising the victory as much for cunning as for strength, warning that secrecy and patience could be deadlier than raw might. He descended the temple steps, robes heavy and soaked, only to be confronted by another who demanded to know why he had spared the final strike. His answer was cold. Once, he had been broken and left to heal, and now he had returned to that fate in kind vengeance, nothing more. But the warning came swift that such mercy was folly, and the grudge would not be forgotten. He warned that the fight was far from over, that the rival would return just as surely as the challenge had been delivered, and the question lingered: why had the killing blow been withheld? The answer came with defiance. The blade had been raised, but a master's intervention had stayed the strike, for the Brotherhood would not see one of its prized apprentices slain. Yet the accusation cut deeper. Hesitation, not mercy from above, had stalled the hand. The shadow of past bloodshed weighed heavy, the fear of the Master's wrath shackling him. But denial burned hot. He insisted this moment was different, that the dark side had not been rejected but resisted in another way. Still, the charge remained mercy, weakness, betrayal of the creed. Fury ignited as he invoked the forgotten wisdom of ancient texts, spitting disdain at those blinded by their teacher's decay. But the question pierced him nonetheless. Where in those texts was compassion for a fallen foe? The clash of words ended with bitter doubt. Alone, he wrestled with the truth that gnawed at him. He had the chance to end it, to prove strength, yet faltered under the weight of rules that no longer belonged. The creed demanded the weak serve the strong, and if his will craved the rival's death, why should others dictate what was forbidden? And in the silence of his turmoil, the thought remained was, the accusation right after all? Sirac's thirst for vengeance lingered like a shadow, a reminder that he would always remain a threat unless Bane ended him. In the dead of night, a knock pulled Bane from his rest, and the Blade Master entered, carrying a weapon unlike the one he usually wielded. Its hilt was curved, its form meant for a single blade. With a flick, the crimson light came alive, and the Master revealed it once belonged to his teacher, a figure who had raised him from childhood after buying him from the chains of the markets. His earliest memories were of watching that weapon blaze through endless drills, ruby arcs slicing the air in perfect rhythm. His family had been left behind, weak and unremarkable, while he was forged into an apprentice and taught the secrets of combat, especially the art of the double blade, though his master preferred this traditional design. Snapping the blade shut, he tossed it to Bane, explaining its strange grip and subtle variations, harder in some moves but devastating in others, a weapon that matched Bane's growing style. When Bane asked if this gift was truly his, the Master affirmed that today he had proven himself worthy, and that the choice was his alone to make. He clenched the curved hilt blade, refusing to let anyone else decide its fate. When asked if his master had given it to him, the answer came cold. No. It was taken the moment the Master fell by his hand. With a smirk, he explained that he had surpassed every lesson, every skill, and so the final test was to prove his strength through death. The old ways of Sith against Sith, Master against apprentice, had once demanded such trials, though the Brotherhood had tried to bury them. Still, the strong always consumed the weak. His warning was sharp: do not mistake honor for power, for he had only revealed part of his knowledge. The apprentice bowed, but in silence, the challenge lingered. The following dawn, he was summoned before the Overseer. The knock echoed once, the door opened, and questions were sharp. Where did this weapon come from? And what did it mean? He answered. It was a reward, proof of victory. The Overseer allowed it, yet reminded him that no matter what weapon hung at his belt, he remained an apprentice, bound by obedience. With measured calm, he agreed, concealing the storm that was building within. Qordis confronted the apprentice, reminding him that defeating his rival had earned the admiration of many, and that he now carried the weight of being an example. But the warning was sharp. His private sessions had to end. When the apprentice realized his secret was known, Qordis declared he was neither blind nor foolish, that such behavior was once tolerated but no longer, for eyes were now upon him. The student asked about his companion, fearing punishment, yet Qordis assured only separation was required, no more private meetings, only lessons in the open. Then came the harsher decree. His studies of the ancient archives must cease. Outraged, the apprentice argued that the scrolls held the wisdom of the ancients, but Qordis dismissed them as relics, claiming the order had evolved. Still, the student pressed back, insisting that the foundation of the past was the key to greater strength, pointing to the very world they stood on and the valley of tombs steeped in secrets. Qordis retorted that the Jedi had stripped them bare millennia ago, leaving nothing of worth. The tension between master and apprentice ignited like a storm, a clash of vision and will, the shadow of destiny looming. The shadows whisper of secrets unseen, and suspicion sparks when one questions if something vital has been overlooked. A heated clash erupts as one master mocks the notion of spirits lingering in tombs, dismissing them as dust and bone, while the apprentice defiantly insists the dead hold greater truths than the living. Insults fly, tempers flare, and with fury the master casts him out, demanding he seek answers among the graves of the ancients. Another steps in, demanding to know what manipulation has taken place, accusing the master of twisting the apprentice's path toward ruin. Denial follows, blame shifts, and the defense is cold. The apprentice was obsessed, unyielding, and useless until he bends to the Academy's will. The tension sharpens as the demand echoes, where is he now? Two figures spoke in hushed tones. One warned that the Wanderer had entered the wastelands, chasing shadows in the Valley of the Dark Lords, obsessed with secrets long stripped away, blind to the dangers of swarms and beasts. The other countered with faith, insisting his strength would see him through. Yet the truth remained, there was nothing left but dust and hollow chambers, a lesson waiting to shatter his illusions. Refusing to heed his masters, he journeyed alone, convinced the past still held answers. Among ruins scarred by invaders, he stepped into a tomb where only an empty sarcophagus greeted him, the silence heavier than stone. No relics, no remains, just a void where greatness once lay, forcing him to confront the emptiness of his search. He called out and his voice echoed across the stone walls. No voice returned his calls. No dark side masters appeared, in ghostly forms to offer advice or knowledge. The past was dead. However, this revelation did not encourage the new teachings of the Sith for him. Instead, it only bolstered his belief that the current Sith have so lost their way that not even the Dark Lords of the past wish to linger in their tombs anymore. Korriban was no longer a place of grand power. The dark side no longer flowed through its core as it once did. The Brotherhood and their pathetic new code of equality have tainted the Sith Order and weakened them as a whole. This made Lord Kaan and all the other masters traitors to the true Sith. Bane would not be fooled. He would not bow down to the will of Lord Kaan and his Brotherhood. It had been weeks since he left the Academy. He survived without food or water due to his immense power in the Force. However, he was now beginning to feel the effects, dehydration, and hunger. Bane returns to the Sith Academy and immediately visits the kitchen area to eat his fill of food and quench his hunger. Then, the veil of fatigue falls over him, so he travels to his room and throws himself on the bed and falls into deep, deep slumber. Qordis. Welcome back, Bane. I trust your journey was educational. I hope you understand now why I let you go. This was the final phase of your training. You had to understand why we have a beyond it, the old ways. This is a new age, and you can understand that only once you recognize the old age is truly gone. Now that you have learned your final lesson, the Academy has nothing left to teach you. You are no longer an apprentice, Bane. You are now fit to join the ranks of the Masters. You are now a Dark Lord of the Sith. I know Lord Kas'im has already gifted you a lightsaber. I too have a gift for you. Take it, Lord Bane. This synthetic crystal is stronger than the one powering your lightsaber now, and it is much, much stronger than the natural crystals the Jedi use in their own weapons. The timing of your return from the wastes couldn't have been better. We are making preparations to leave Korriban. Lord Kaan has need of us on Ruusan. The Brotherhood demanded unity to crush the Jedi, yet one voice declared it doomed. He saw their leader as blind to the true darkness, dragging them toward ruin. Another warned him to hold his tongue, accusing him of treason, yet offering a choice: join their ranks or be lost forever. The students of Korriban were raised as lords and summoned to war, their master boasting of imminent victory. But he refused to follow, knowing the Brotherhood held no answers for him. Later, he faced a knock at his door, this time from one who mattered. She confronted him, demanding why he left. He admitted his weakness, his failure to end his rival, his shame in facing her, and his disillusion with blind teachers who praised empty victories. She had been the only one to see his truth, the only one to open his eyes. He confessed he abandoned the Academy to seek the wisdom buried in the Valley of the Dark Lords. She snapped at his silence, and he admitted his fault, driven away by anger. Then he turned the question back. Why had she come? In the shadows of the archives, tension crackled as betrayal revealed itself. She had led him into a trap, 4 enemies waiting with blades ignited. They mocked his strength, believing numbers would decide the fight, but he saw through their game, calling out the truth that she had never planned to stand with them. In the instant steel clashed with fire, she hurled his weapon back into his hands, her own whip igniting as she chose her side. The battle was swift and merciless, allies of his foe falling one after another until only the broken challenger remained, begging for mercy. But mercy was not what the moment demanded, and with her voice cold and sharp, she urged the final blow. Sith'ari begged for mercy, offering his service and loyalty, but was struck down as weakness has no place in the path of power. Githany confronted Bane, admitting she should never have underestimated him, shocked by his cunning even when he claimed he had only guessed her action. She called him Lord, but he rejected the title, scorning the Brotherhood's false ranks and mocking Kaan as a blind fool leading the Sith into ruin. She defended Kaan as a man of vision, yet Bane dismissed the Brotherhood, the Academy, and everything they stood for as monuments to ignorance, urging her to follow him to a place where the dark side still thrived. Torn between Kaan's call for unity and Bane's raw truth, she hesitated, but he warned that joining Ruusan meant joining their defeat. As she pleaded with him to wait, the truth became clear. Bane had slain Sith'ari and his allies in the library, and now, disillusioned with the Academy's hollow teachings, he was ready to confront Qordis and declare his true name. The chamber shook as he burst through the doors, his voice a storm demanding answers. Had the Master sent assassins against him? When the feigned ignorance came, he revealed the truth. He had already slain them, their bodies left as proof. On the eve of war, outrage filled the air, yet he dismissed their grand crusade as hollow, rejecting the so-called Brotherhood. No longer a student, no pawn of another's will, he stood as a true Dark Lord. They tried to bind him with orders, but he declared his freedom, vowing none could stop him. He named their fear for what it was, cowardice, the reason none dared claim the ancient title. And in that moment, he cast aside all false teachings, proclaiming himself Darth, master of his own fate, the shadow that would not bend to any throne. She turned away from him, refusing his call, and he knew the so-called Brotherhood would collapse, their stolen worlds already slipping back to the Republic. In the ancient archives, whispers spoke of a distant place, Lihan, the shattered throne of a forgotten species, and that would be his path. Declaring his true name, he left the Academy behind, seizing a stolen cruiser once gifted to another, now his by right. Through the void he flew, and when he reached the lost world, the scars of history bled into the skies, wreckage and relics drifting like ghosts. On the surface, a beast of monstrous size thundered forth, yet he did not falter. With a single thought, he bent its mind, chained its will, and rode it toward the temple where the darkness called. The jungle itself recoiled from the ruin, trees halting in fear of its shadow. Inside, no riches drew him, no treasure tempted him, only knowledge, the wisdom of ancients who had watched empires burn. For he knew the order he had left was doomed, and only by seeking the truth of the Sith's past could he forge the future. The search yielded nothing, yet as he climbed higher, the pull of darkness grew heavier, drawing his gaze to a cracked wall near a ruined terminal where a faint purple glow bled through the stone. Reaching with the Force, he shattered its secret and uncovered a hidden relic, a smooth pyramid device without markings, an ancient holocron unlike any he had seen before. Sitting upon the cold ground, he poured his essence into it until light sparked and a hooded figure appeared, declaring with cold clarity that he was the Dark Lord. The echo of laughter roared through the halls as the vision spoke of the dark side's truth. Power demanded to be craved, mercy and compassion were chains, and only those who embraced transformation without hesitation could wield true strength. Those who sought balance would falter, dragged into failure by their own weakness. The dark side offers power, but holding it is the true trial, for its very essence breeds rivalry and strife. This struggle is both strength and weakness, culling the frail while fueling betrayal, as apprentices inevitably conspire against their master. Thus the rule of two was born, one master, one apprentice, and only one true Dark Lord, the embodiment of power itself. From the holocron's fading light, the teachings of the ancients revealed this truth, and when it crumbled, the knowledge remained. Meditation brought clarity. The false brotherhood would be erased, its stain wiped clean, and in its place a new order would rise. Destiny demanded vengeance, demanded rebirth, demanded that the Sith be remade in fire and shadow. With the discovery of the Thought Bomb, a weapon of annihilation, The path was clear obliteration of the Brotherhood, deception of the Jedi, and the promise of a future where the strong ruled and the Sith endured. He rebuilt in the shadows, forging a legacy to outlast centuries. At first, he believed he alone could embody the Sith, one master holding all their power, but death was inevitable, and the dark side demanded continuity. His revelation came with the rule of two, one to wield power, the other to covet it, ending the endless cycle of betrayal and guiding the Sith into a new age. The old ways would be destroyed, the Brotherhood swept aside, and only one question remained: who would become his apprentice? Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence, an invitation laced with threat. Sabers ignited, sparks flying as conviction clashed with tradition. One saw strength in solitude and rebirth, the other in unity and compromise. The old ways had failed, the galaxy littered with the remains of Sith who had fallen before. Now stood the clash of philosophies, the storm of blades, and the dawn of a power that would change everything. The Brotherhood was declared the future of the dark side, yet he stood firm, rejecting their call. His former master sighed, warning that refusal meant death, and the two clashed with blades blazing. Each strike was faster, sharper, echoing their past bond now shattered. The master revealed his hidden weapon, splitting his double blade into two, a style he had once mocked as flawed, but in truth had perfected as his secret edge. The apprentice faltered under the storm of flawless strikes, yet the fury of revelation surged through him like fire, allowing him to turn the tide. Cast from the temple by a forceful blast, he faced his master's taunts to end the fight without fear. Smiling coldly, he unleashed the dark power within, collapsing the ancient temple and burying his teacher beneath rubble, walking away victorious. On the shore beside his starship, his mind sharpened with new designs, crafting a false apology and offering forbidden knowledge to deceive the Brotherhood. Plotting the downfall of those who still clung to illusion, she receives the hollow message, sees the broken figure he pretends to be, and agrees to meet him with murder in mind. Using the drone's coordinates, she travels to Ambria, lips coated in hidden poison, ready for their confrontation. When they meet, he greets her with expectation, but she makes clear she came by choice. He speaks of regret, she scorns weakness, and suspects deeper motives. He draws her close, stealing a kiss, and confesses his shame once blinded by the legends of ancient Dark Lords. She reminds him that power lies not in the past but in the Brotherhood's strength, declaring victory within reach on Ruusan. He counters with harsh truth. The wider war is lost, the army shattered, and the Republic regains its hold. Yet she insists none of that matters if the Jedi fall. Their destruction would turn the tide. He warns that Ruusan does not hold them all, but she dismisses the scattered few across the galaxy. In that tense exchange, passion, deception, and ambition collide, each word carrying the weight of betrayal and the lure of power. The army of light is faltering, and whispers of inevitable victory stir doubt as one questions whether their leader's promises mean anything at all. Accusations of disloyalty clash with declarations of faith, yet beneath the surface lies a dangerous game of deception. He rejects the hollow claim that all are equal, believing true strength comes from hierarchy, while she hints that once the Jedi fall, some will indeed rise above the rest. A kiss seals what she thinks is his acceptance, but hidden within it is venom meant to end him. Though he resists the first poison, a second, more lethal brew begins to burn through his body, stealing his breath and twisting his insides. Staggering and fading, he drags himself onto a land crawler, his vision swimming until he encounters a humble family in the fields. As a young boy picks up the fallen lightsaber, fear grips the father, and the shadow of death looms heavy. For the Dark Warrior knows he can feed on their lives to cling to his own until salvation can be found. He ignites his blade with the Force and strikes down the first boy without mercy, while the father is forced to watch in horror as the second child falls next, the weapon piercing his heart. Feeding on their terror, he regains his strength and slaughters the father, declaring that the weak must serve the strong, for this is the way it must be. He rides the crawler across Ambria until he discovers a small camp, home to a healer who refuses to aid him, unwilling to take sides or heal a killer. Yet the healer's weakness is revealed when his daughter is found, lifted by the Force and dangled above a boiling pot until the man complies. Restored to health, he departs and returns to his ship, plotting his next move, to confront the other Sith Lords on Ruusan. Knowing they had already tried to betray him, he resolves to assert dominance and shape the fate of the Brotherhood, manipulating events toward their destruction through the thought bomb. Upon arriving on Ruusan, he crosses a battlefield and finds a dying Sith, who gasps in disbelief at his survival. When begged for aid, he answers only with his true name, Darth Bane, before crushing the light from the fallen and marching on toward the encampment, his dark purpose set. Inside the strategy tent, heated voices echoed as plans were debated, but the atmosphere shifted when a towering shadow fell across the holotable. Shock rippled through the gathering. He was supposed to be dead. With a weary tone, he asked to sit, addressing the others as brother, though the word dripped with disdain. The discussion turned to flushing out the enemy from the forest with flyers and split forces, but he cut through the chatter with scorn, mocking such tactics as the thinking of common generals, not Lords of Darkness. He reminded them of the poison that failed to end him, praising the deception instead of condemning it, for trickery was strength. Then, his voice thundered with command as he urged them to look beyond mere battle to annihilate the forest itself. When challenged, he offered not just strategy but revelation. The dark side was one, whole, and indivisible. He beckoned them to surrender, to let it consume them, to be devoured by its power until they felt untouchable, invincible. He mocked the idea of alliance, laughing at the thought of replacing one weak leader with another, and with a crushing grip of the Force, he silenced the false teacher whose so-called wisdom had poisoned the Brotherhood. The choking plea for an honorable duel was met only with scorn, for honor meant nothing to the dead. In an instant, the Master of Shadows shattered his foe's defenses, snapped his throat, and left the broken husk to rot in the brush. His eyes then turned to the greater game manipulating the commander of the Brotherhood itself. Slipping into the command tent, he bent the machines to his will, sending false orders that hurled their fleet into battle with the Republic. The trap was perfect. Jedi reinforcements poured onto the world, tipping the balance and driving the Brotherhood into retreat, while the architect of their downfall stood in the shadows, watching his plan unfold. He was no fool, and he knew exactly why the other had come in an attempt to seize control of the Brotherhood. Promises of aid and influence spilled forth, claims that the loyalty of old students could be bent like steel in the forge. But the answer came in cruel laughter and a tightening grip of the Force. The so-called wisdom had poisoned everything, dragging their order into decay. There would be no alliance, no compromise, only purging fire. Desperate pleas for an honorable duel were met with cold disdain. Honor meant nothing to the dead. The dark warrior crushed his throat and cast the lifeless body aside, a hollow husk left to rot. With that obstacle gone, he turned his gaze to the next move, slipping into the enemy commander's tent and seizing control of the fleet. His orders hurled ships into reckless battle, opening the way for hundreds of Jedi to descend upon the battlefield. The Brotherhood faltered, their leader forced into retreat. Unaware that every setback was the design of one who had returned to destroy and rebuild from the ashes, the tent crackled with tension as one sneered, mocking the other's failed glory. The answer was bitter. Reinforcements had broken through, shattering the advantage. Rage flared as accusations flew. Fleets disobeyed, battles lost, victory slipping away. Yet the Darker One's vision stretched far beyond a single general's death, his hunger aimed at the Brotherhood itself. The other spat back, calling him a fool, warning that such ambition would lead them all to ruin. But despair clashed with cold conviction as whispers of forbidden rituals and the dreaded thought bomb filled the air. The choice was laid bare: kneel or perish. Doubt rose. Would the others follow such a tyrant or turn against him once the truth of his schemes came to light? Killing me won't hide your secret, the voice warned. The others already suspect you weren't in the battle. You may be the strongest, but you can't stand against us all. Bane admitted the truth, and Kaan offered him a way out. Join the Brotherhood, retreat to the caves, lure the enemy inside, and unleash the thought bomb. Bane agreed, masking his intent, letting Kaan believe he held control. As night fell, the Brotherhood marched into the depths, 100 warriors following, none returning. From afar, Bane reached out with the Force as the ritual consumed them all, leaving him the sole survivor. Even those he once considered as possible allies were gone. The thought bomb's devastation was absolute within the caves, and when the echoes faded, Bane stood alone. The last survivor of the Order's fall rises as its new master, hidden from the Jedi who believed the Sith perished on Ruusan. With patience, secrecy, and cunning, he begins rebuilding the Sith from within, knowing it could take centuries before victory over the Republic is achieved. On Ruusan, he encounters a young girl who has already slain Jedi in vengeance, recognizing her as the apprentice the dark side has placed before him, and he claims her as his own. Together, they uncover an ancient manuscript revealing codes of power and the location of a long-lost tomb. He ventures to the dangerous world alone, enduring a brutal crash that forces him to reset his own broken arm before pressing onward. Deep inside the tomb, already looted of its treasures, he finds a hidden black doorway sealed by fading sorcery. Breaking through, he uncovers a chamber with a single holocron, only to be ambushed by strange insect-like creatures whose armored shells defy his blade. As they descend in swarms, he seizes the artifact at the center while the monsters close in, his path forward fraught with peril. He slashed with his blade and hurled the rest aside with raw power, but just as he reached for escape, parasites clamped onto his flesh, burning acid searing through his veins as mocking voices filled the air. Refusing to fall, he roared against the empty corridors until the phantoms fled, then turned to the relic, learning the truth of the creatures now fused to him, or Balisks, living armor that granted strength, endurance, and resistance, yet brought endless pain as they spread across his body. He forged gear to contain them, endured their torment, and drew upon their power. From the holocron, he gained wisdom to shape his apprentice, discovering her gift for sorcery, and for decades he molded her under the rule of two, knowing one day she would challenge him. His own failures at crafting a holocron drove him into fury, the parasites amplifying his rage, until betrayal and revelation led him to the key he lacked. Nearly striking down his own apprentice, he realized her act was meant to grant him the knowledge he sought, and in that storm of pain, power, and deception, the path of his dark legacy sharpened into fate. When the dust settled, it dawned on the Dark Warrior that to truly command his strength, he might have to shed the parasitic armor devouring him. If he let the creatures guide his will, even his own apprentice could become his victim. From forbidden knowledge, he learned of a missing piece, a capstone meant to stabilize destructive power. His holocron projection wore the grotesque armor, a deception to mislead enemies and a warning that true mastery required agony. While his apprentice infiltrated the Temple of Light, he ventured into a fortress on a distant world. But pursuit came 5 foes, 3 of them masters. Side by side, master and apprentice struck them down, yet victory was costly. A storm of raw lightning rebounded, leaving him broken and burned, forcing his apprentice to drag him back from death's edge with the aid of a reluctant healer. Years later, as age crept upon him, doubt grew. Was his apprentice waiting too long to claim the mantle? To preserve the future, he hunted the secret of essence transfer, whispered to belong to an ancient lord. His path carried him to a temple where zealots worshipped a corpse god. When they rushed him, he let his aura flare, and bodies withered into husks before his gaze. Through corridors slick with shadows, he cut down resistance until at last he stood before his prize, a holocron of forbidden eternity. The Dark Lord confronted the ancient gatekeeper, demanding the forbidden ritual of essence transfer, but the Guardian warned him of destruction, torment, and the eternal void should he fail. Undeterred, the Dark Lord declared his supremacy, only to be denied and dismissed as unworthy. Enraged, he seized control of the holocron itself, bending its framework through sheer will until the secret knowledge seared into his mind in an instant. Overwhelmed but victorious, he journeyed home, absorbing every detail of the newfound power. Yet upon arrival, he was ambushed, flashbangs erupted, soldiers swarmed with nets and rifles, and a mysterious figure suppressed his strength. Summoning the full fury of the dark side, he unleashed lightning, crushed enemies with ruthless precision, and leapt to confront the source of the suppression, a gifted warrior standing against him. He lunges, but she twists with deadly grace and kicks him down hard. While he reels in shock, she drops beside him and slices his arm, forcing him to stumble back as the venom on her blade seeps in. The toxin takes hold, freezing the dark figure's strength and leaving him helpless for capture. When he awakens, chains and chemicals bind him in a cell, his mind clouded and body restrained. The mastermind reveals herself a shadow from his past, once just a small girl cast aside, now risen with vengeance as the daughter of the healer. The tale closes on this chilling turn, urging the audience toward what comes next, with thanks for witnessing the struggle, the voices that brought it to life, and the long effort poured into shaping every frame.